WaveAct, the web-free software company that understands what you want.
Hi everyone, welcome at WaveAct. Today with Bannwart from Alephium. She's Chief Operating Officer there and is in charge of a lot of crazy things. So join our discussion today for a lot of interesting topics around Alephium from marketing, BD, tech, product, and also the big vision what they have for the layer 1 network and all the specifics and unique characteristics they're being working on. So really check it out, and yeah, let's jump right into it. Scalable for devs, secure for users, decentralized for all. That's the line that you guys have on your main website that you advertise with. So my main question or first question for you, for everyone that hasn't heard about Alephium so far, what is it? What's special about it? And how would you describe it to maybe even a 5-year-old?
Okay, so Alephium is a layer 1 blockchain, and specifically it's a layer 1 blockchain that has been designed for smart contract application. And Alephium really is unique in the technological choices that it made so that it can offer a much more secure and user-friendly regular user or developer interface for smart contract and decentralized application, making it easy for experienced and also not so experienced developers and users to navigate the blockchain space, because today we are still very, very far from that. Yeah.
Very interesting. And what was the inception like? Alephium has been in the space for quite some time, but what was the big why of why Alephium has been founded?
Yeah, so the founder of Alephium, who's named Cheng Wang, he started studying consensus algorithm and diving into blockchain around 2015. And around 2018, he started to not very happy with the direction that the industry was taking on the area of decentralized application smart contract, because we saw, Ethereum move from proof of work to proof of stake. And today, the majority of the industry is using the account model and EVM, and Solidity for virtual machine and smart contract language. And while those are great technology, they also have a lot of trade-off and still a lot of pitfalls, attack vector, and the fact that pretty much not many people in the industry were trying to innovate on that front. So it was really driven by the want to offer a proper alternative, something that would be radically different in the terms of technology, and that would offer a platform for smart contract application that would be more secure, more decentralized than proof of stake. That's why we chose to stay within the proof of work family, while greatly improving the user experience and obviously scalability. If you're a layer 1 blockchain, this is something you have to address. So that's kind of by 2019, 2020, this was a must-have for any new chain. So it was really a will to offer something drastically different from the industry, because the industry will mature once we have multiple solutions and multiple options that people can choose based on their conviction, their use cases. But right now we're still very much so in a monopoly, which is less than ideal in a lot of cases.
And you basically mentioned or counted now all three elements of the well-known blockchain trilemma, right? Decentralization, security, and scalability. I know you mentioned all three, but let's assume it's still like valid, where do you see Alephium on that triangle?
I mean, so I want to say, every chain is going to say they have like kind of the nicest output on the trade-offs. I would say, I think I would add a first dimension to the trilemma, which I think is programmability, because that definitely impacts for example, the scalability side, because you do have additional factors to take into account when you design your chain, and it's potentially you have different challenges when you want to scale this. Honestly, it fares pretty good, especially on it fares pretty good considering that it is a proof of work chain. Obviously, on the scalability side, when it comes, people usually think of TPS as a way to measure scalability. Obviously, we wouldn't be as high as certain proof of stake that have a crazy high number. But if you believe that proof of work is a more decentralized approach for blockchain, then I think we're faring pretty well, because Alephium can easily support well over 10,000 TPS natively in a layer one that is more contract capable since day one. So I would say pretty good. But again, on each, if you take each factor independently, obviously there's always, again, with the trade-off, but overall pretty good. And I think, again, the smart contract capabilities is really what sets us apart, for example, within the proof of work ecosystem specifically.
There's one thing that I find highly interesting when layer ones with the unique smart contract language, basically like Alephium also has that, has their own smart contract language named Wolf, right? And this, of course, is really difficult for developers to adopt, right? Because they need to learn something new, and that can be challenging. So I know you probably have a really good answer to this,
Yeah.
and I would love to hear it. But there's a follow-up question on that. So I will give you the shot first, and then,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yes, let's say it's a correct expectation, but the way the design the way the language has been designed is to be really easy to pick up. It takes first, it's a small language. It has a lot of inspiration from Rust, some little touch of Solidity, but mainly Rust, some little touch of Scala, which is also a language that we use. But overall, it's a pretty straightforward and small languages that is very intuitive. So in practice, we've seen that the new language and the new virtual machine are not really what the developer struggled with the most. We had a hackathon. We had developers coming from other chain. For example, we had a developer who had built a dApp on another ecosystem. He had over 3 years of experience in, and he could, and that took him 2 months to build there, having those 3 years of experience. And he came to building an Alephium through our hackathon. And in 2 weeks, without having ever been familiarized with that Alephium technology, he was able to build that dApp on Alephium. Where we find in practice, what people struggle a little bit more with is not so much development environment, again, because it's really been made to be intuitive. And this is a feedback we've heard again from people coming from Solana, from Cadena, from the Ergo Cardano space, from Ethereum as well. So we really had, let's say, it's a universally shared feedback on that. But what people struggle more with is the fact that we are UTXO based. Like the UTXO model is simple, but in what it does, but also quite complex for people to grasp, because it's very different from what people are used to. And I would say the second aspect would be kind of the sharding aspect that we have on our network for scalability, but UTXO model being the main things that people have to wrap their hand around when they come into Alephium.
It's very interesting. I can still imagine, or basically it's really difficult to avoid that you still have to learn something new, right? No matter if it's the easiest language in the world. So
Yeah.
my that's basically a follow-up question. As we have seen like layer twos, not for scalability, but also for abstracting smart contract languages, for example. When you look at Near and Aurora, sorry my pronunciation, then you are able to develop in Solidity for a non-EVM network. Is that something that Alephium is considering or would be thankful for a project to build on them as their own, as with their own layer 2 network, or What are your thoughts on that?
I would say first, Alephium is permissionless, and from a technical standpoint, layer twos are possible. You would need to still implement a few mechanism for it to be available, but definitely doable. I would say that it's not something that we would pursue because one of our biggest value proposition is to offer an environment that is very different from EVM and actually mitigate a lot of the attack vector, security pitfalls, and just design that are a little bit inconvenient, like the way you have to approve tokens before interacting with the DApp, which is used. One is definitely not logical in the way it functions, like in the way you would imagine this interaction happen, but also offer a lot of possibility for attack vectors towards users. So that's not something we would be actively pursuing or prioritizing. It is something that can be done. That being, yes.
I mean, considering all that, right? Right now, at least from what I've seen last week, I think on your website, your total, also your TVL right now is around 9 million. Is that true, or am I misinformed here?
Um, I mean, the price has changed a lot since we had a couple big news
Yeah.
into the ecosystem. So, but that doesn't count the bridge TVL. So I think if you added the bridge TVL, we would be more around. Last week we would have been more around, I want to say 25 million. The all-time high, which obviously is linked to an all-time high in price because that most of the liquidity is in our, a big chunk of the liquidity is in our native asset, right? The all-time high was 60 million. Yes, over 60 million. And I think now we are, whatever you look last week probably is doubled now just because of the impact on the price on this. That is, but yeah, that is correct. And actually for a proof of work chain, this is pretty high because we have the largest TVL amongst proof of work chain with the exception of Bitcoin. And that doesn't mean that we have a crazy high TVL, which is still decent, right? But it also means that this is really a spot where there's a gap, right? Like clearly, because it was relatively easy to arrive into this position.
It's definitely not criticism, right? I know an ecosystem is, I would dare to say, one of the most difficult things you can actually build at all, right? So
To maintain, right? It's like you have to maintain it through the different market cycle and events that are completely outside of your ecosystem even, but that do have an impact. Uh, I I think we're pretty proud of our ecosystem because people are extremely engaged. We had our first developer meetup just a month ago, and it was a huge success. We even had people coming from developers that are used to going into maybe bigger meetups. I mean, meetup from bigger chain, and they say it's been a while since they've seen that kind of enthusiasm where people really are enthusiastic about the technology and are here because they sincerely believe in it and not so much, or at least not exclusively for potential gain that they could have out of it. But still, small but mighty. But I like it. It allows, I hope we can retain some of this humanity maybe in the way that we like human interaction that we have into our ecosystem, because this is something that people really value. And I hope that as we scale and grow, we can keep this as much as possible. Because that has been, again, one of the most given feedback that we got from developers coming to our ecosystem. And we have a lot of catalyst, I think, in terms of for the ecosystem. We will have the first Oracle coming to the chain. They are currently being tested on testnet and should be launched this week. And this will allow for a whole new generation of dApps or features to be developed on chain. So pretty excited about this as well.
quick intermission. If I could ask you for one single favor, it would be that you hit subscribe onto this channel because it helps our channel more than you can imagine. And the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. So thank you very much for watching, and let's continue with the episode. That's cool. I mean, step by step. right?
It's a
Ecosystems take
marathon.
time.
That feels like a sprint most days, but it is a marathon. It's just a very fast one.
Absolutely. Um, I mean, aside from all the amazing product developments, of course, what are other strategies that Alephium is currently pursuing to actually extend its ecosystem in terms of also things that you can share already, of course, from partnerships to um, other some marketing or events planned. What's going on? What's exciting you personally right now?
Well, first, obviously, bringing kind of as a non-EVM chain, bringing classic services into our chain is obviously a little bit harder because a lot of services prefer to work with EVM compatible chain because it's not exactly copy paste, but as close to copy paste as it can be. Obviously, so it's a lot easier for them to port their solution. So bringing this to Alephium takes a little bit more effort. And so again, the arrival of Oracle will have also Fiat Gateway, so kind of a RPC node providers for people who don't want to run their own infrastructure. So trying to bring those services into our ecosystem to support builders and really make it, make sure they have everything they need available and as easily as possible. This is one aspect. There's also something about interoperability. One thing that really helped us kickstart the development of our ecosystem is that very early on, we built a bridge. The first one was to Ethereum, and that allowed us to bring stablecoin into Alephium. So existing stablecoin, yeah, like USDT, USDC, and that really helped kickstart the growth of the ecosystem, especially when it came to DeFi, but not only. So we want to continue to work into interoperability by having more bridge to other ecosystem, which I think is very important. We always try also to have mutually beneficial relationship with like-minded community. So we do a lot of communication with projects, for example, within the proof of work space, within the UTXO space, because let's say the barrier for people to jump into Alephium is lower because they're already either familiar or convinced by some of the technological choices that we've made. And then if it's not this, it's shared values, decentralization, security. And so we do leverage this a lot because it's more qualified, I would say, outreach to some extent. But of course, we also explore a little bit more let's say mainstream ways to approach attention. I mean, this is things that we're looking into. We've made a few tries, not super successful. Like we worked with ZilliQuest. The way we designed it didn't really work for us, but we're exploring how can we maybe leverage some of those mechanisms in a way that brings lasting adoption and not the opposite of that, basically. Obviously, we're continuously working on more listings, but as a layer one, it's extremely challenging. There's a number of layer one that are in the top 25 that are not listed on tier one exchange today. It's just to illustrate that as a layer one, it's becoming harder and harder to get listed on exchange, especially tier one. But that's something that we continuously work on, and we also look at regional exchange to try and there's some exchanges that have a very strong hold into certain communities. So that's also something we try to target. And then, I mean, for us, the most important as well is to continue working into our value proposition, because once you get people in, you have to give them something that they want to stay, right? That's the most important. It's the retention. This is what makes you sustainable throughout the cycles. Because we don't want to be there for just one cycle, right? We want to be there in the long term because we believe we bring a solution that's going to be positive for the ecosystem, for the space in the long term. So making sure also that we push forward some of our innovation. MEV is something that is being discussed a lot on for smart contracts enabled chain. We are very much more MEV or MEV, I don't know what would be the right way to pronounce it, resistant than most chain, smart contract chain, again, because of some of our technological choices. So we have a great solution for that. Also, when it comes to reentrancy attack, which have been draining protocols. So making sure that we continue to build up those value proposition We reduce block time, which also makes it easier for certain application to be built on top of Alephium. So, working outside, but also making sure we keep the chain competitive and innovative and bringing value to its users.
Of interesting characteristics of Alephium. What would you say are some of the unique use cases that are better suited for Alephium or even unique to it?
I mean, I would say unique to Alephium, there's a lot of, let's say, it's not necessarily unique to Alephium because other UTXO chain that have smart contract could really leverage this, but most of their smart contract environment didn't get the adoption that where we could really see that innovation being explored. So I think really everything that is DeFi leveraging UTXO, because UTXO allows you, for example, one, to get multiple assets from multiple people into a single transaction and kind of have basically atomic swap between multiple people across multiple assets. And so seeing that innovation being integrated into DeFi for more trustless interaction between participant and asset, I think would be very interesting to, that can be DeFi, but actually within the NFT side of things could be really interesting as well. And while it's not necessarily, again, specific to Alephium, I think Alephium is uniquely positioned to have this explored because of how convenient it is on the smart contract side, because it's fully stateful contract. So you have the same programmability as you found on account-based chain, that same convenience. And because of that, I think we're uniquely placed to see some innovation into that front. But then generally speaking, I think Alephium is really much suited for any of the existing use cases. Maybe one exception where Alephium hasn't been optimized for would be really to store a lot of data on chain, because the whole point of Alephium is also to be scalable, right? So it's not optimized for this. So an example would be maybe an IoT application that would want to have every IoT sensors as an oracle pushing data on chain, every 10 seconds or something. If it was designed like this, Alephium probably wouldn't be the best or ideal blockchain for that, but you could still, you would just have to design it differently for Alephium to really be suited for it. That would be an example of where probably other design would be better.
From a developer perspective, if let's say I have a small on-chain protocol, maybe I have a DEX or something like that, what were some of the key considerations? I know you're not a developer yourself, but what are some of the key considerations of of moving my project to Alephium?
Yeah. So everything has been designed so it's faster. So usually if you come, I will give the example that I know. For example, some of the smart contracts, the way they're implemented on EVM, they can be implemented on Alephium with a lot less lines of code. So as a developer, it will take you less time, less lines of code, so less areas for errors. So you can develop faster, maybe with a smaller team. Because a lot of the common attack vector don't exist or have been mitigated, you also can reduce your cost when it comes to audit. It's not that you shouldn't be audited. Like any chain that will tell you we are hack proof, this is a lie. It's like a chain telling you they're infinitely scalable. That technologically is not possible. So it's kind of the same. So we really make it faster, easier to write secure code, so you have more time to actually focus on what matters, which is building. I'm sure you've talked with a lot of projects, and so you know that as a developer and as a project, a big chunk of your cost is going to go into smart contract audits, and even those smart contract audits in many cases won't protect you against those common attack vector. So you would come into an environment where you would have a little bit more peace of mind, and you can focus into doing the part that you're excited about, I hope, which is building and innovating. You would also come into an ecosystem where you are actually actively contributing to shaping the virtual machine and smart contract language. So on purpose, we started small so that everything would be built up by use cases, so that you avoid a little bit the pitfall of building something incredibly big, incredibly open, where you have 10,000 different ways to do the same thing, because again, then you end up not being suited for a lot of the use cases, or introducing a lot of ways for people to make mistake. And we have a very reactive team. We're building for builders. So you really have this exchange, and you can really impact the way Alephium is going to grow. And hopefully one day we have developers that, in addition to providing feedback, actually start improving it themselves, right? That's the ultimate goal.
I mean, looking at all that, what would you say are, or is Alephium's core focus in terms of what kind of industries you want to attract? Is it DeFi? Is it GameFi? Is it like, because most chains lean towards one of these areas, right? Or do you really try to be unbiased here in the general purpose chain?
A little bit of both, meaning general purpose would be this, but with also being realistic into right now in the broader industry, DeFi remains the area that sees the most lasting adoption. So this is also, even being a little bit more general purpose, this is where probably most of the effort will be, because this is also what we see, what people are starting to build first. And to some extent, the increased security, again, DeFi being the most adopted area, it's also where those security issues are the most painful. So I would say overall general purpose, but realistically, DeFi would be probably the first use cases that will be the most explored. At least this is what we see based on what is being built. Yeah, that would be my answer.
Thank you. I mean, looking at your website, there are, of course, as a young network, still a lot of things that you're actively working on, right? That
Yep.
you want to extend, that you want to allow people to build upon. What would you say are one of the core aspects, features, security considerations to improve that part as well, or maybe in terms of decentralization that your internal team is actually currently working on?
Yeah. Boy, I'll start with, you finish with decentralization, so I will start with this. As a young network, there's a heavy reliance on the core team, the core contributor to continue to develop the network. But ultimately, like I said before, our goal is that we will fade into the ecosystem. You have to kind of kickstart that movement, but ultimately you have to empower the ecosystem to become what drives the chain. Today, we do it in the way that, again, integrating developer feedback in a very iterative manner. Actually, or last network upgrade, one of the key features, the choice of prioritizing that feature came from community feedback that was reducing the block time. We reduced our block time by 4, so we went from 64 to 16. And that was prioritized based on community feedback. So that's the first step. But we also, provide a lot of grants, also empower community members with grants as well. So we have a community DAO, for example, so they can pursue what they think is best for the ecosystem. And I think one thing that we do that is indirect, but also part of it is the attention of forcing decentralization, is that we try to keep the core team or the core contributor small. We haven't really grew the team, no matter if you compare the growth of the project over the past 10 months versus the growth of the team hasn't changed. And that is something that we try and want to maintain, because that forces you into, you have to decentralize, you have to hand things over, because your day don't get longer, So this is also one way that we make sure that we don't fall into the trap of, hiring more and more people and furthering and just making your team the central part of the ecosystem, and harder for you to then decentralize later on. So there will be this. I think, again, being a young network, better documentation always. This is something that is critical. And as a sharded network, I think one of the big things that will be part of the next network upgrade will be further abstraction from this. At the transaction level, you don't see the fact that we are a sharded network, a partition network. because of, again, of the technology that we've chosen. But at the smart contract level, you still have some user experience aspect that could be really abstracted completely to remove the feeling that you are into a partition network. So that will be a big priority. Potentially reducing block time even more, but that does require proper investigation and optimization. And then again, I think touching to what I said before, basically finding ways to give the stage to the ecosystem, supporting project, and also because we succeed when project built on top of Alephium succeeds. So a big part of our work will also be to make sure we support those projects, give them the visibility that they deserve into our ecosystem as well.
Totally. I mean, BD marketing, these kind of things are, you can't avoid them if you're trying to build an ecosystem. It's just that's the goal, right? To make other people successful on your network. I mean, in terms of getting truly off the ground, right? Because there are a lot of competing L1s or L2s that you basically are on the market with, right? What what's your superior strategy in terms of how you try to be not just better, but let's say 10 times better? Because when you want people to switch, there's always that switching cost, that huge pain of moving to another network or doing something differently in behavior. Is there some strategy that you can share already, or is that more kind of still being discussed internally?
I mean, I don't think we will have a strategy that would be radically different than what you typically see. Where we have a really big value proposition is we are radically different from what you see in the space. Like there's very, very few things that try to build smart contract infrastructure on UTXO and proof of work. So meaning we have a very big differentiator on that. And this is a value proposition. When your two layer ones that are EVM compatible, that are proof of stake, you have to, the argument for you to be different will usually, you will be left with a few technical differentiation, and then the big differentiation is what incentive are you going to provide for people to come, which is obviously still something that we have to do, but at least we have a second pillar on which to that we can leverage. Is like we're radically different, and this is very easy to see. So that is very helpful. But I honestly can't say that we will have like kind of that marketing strategy that no one has ever thought of before. We will try. It's kind of also with the way that we've built Alephium. Is like we want to be pragmatic. We want to look at what has been done, what we've seen that has worked, that is also aligned with who we are as a project and who we want Alephium to be as a community, as an ecosystem, and fine tune it for this to work for our ecosystem, its unique identity, because obviously as the core contributor, we are part of the brand of the project, but our community as well. So you also have to find strategy that works with the reality of who you are, what stage you're in, and also what are your objectives. I would say that maybe this is a bit naive in the space that we are at the time that we are, but we would rather have maybe less in numbers, but higher in quality, you know, which is not, again, that's not always the strategy of everyone. Some people, and every strategy is valid, and I think it really depends on what you're trying to achieve, also what you believe. We are maybe, you know, we're proof of work, UTXO, like the original Bitcoin thing. So you can tell we have a little bit of a idealistic view on the space and strong conviction. So we will most likely lean towards strategy that maybe are less for numbers and a little bit more for quality, but we try to be open-minded as well, to let ourselves be surprised, right? Because sometimes you have preconception about what you think is going to work for yourself or your strategy, but it's very easy to be tunnel vision a bit, especially, you know, if you're very opinionated on things. So we also let ourselves experience things that maybe at first we wouldn't be approaching, to really we try to have a very methodic and pragmatic approach to things. This is a lot of things I said that are not very concrete, but I hope it was still useful as an answer?
I mean, thank you for sharing that. And that actually leads me to my last question, which I think might be a little bit more succinct. Do you have three key takeaways that you want to that you want people to remember from this awesome session?
Yes. The first takeaway is that right now, the blockchain space still needs a lot of innovation to reach a broader stage of adoption. And I think today Alephium brings some of the innovation that will make that possible. And I encourage you to check out and dive, do a proper research. And I think you will see this. But that's the first one. The second one is that well, actually, that's my key takeaway. I don't know that I can make two that would be as important. The second one is that
For devs, maybe, for
for them,
example.
yeah, it's actually a lot easier than you'd think. And as a developer, actually, you're always constantly learning new language or keeping your knowledge up to date as languages evolve. So actually picking up a new environment and a new language is not as difficult as it can seem at first, especially if it's been designed in a way that makes it very easy to pick up. So I would, again, encourage you to check out and maybe, see it for yourself. And the third one is, again, Alephium is built to bring value. And whether you're a user or developer, you can contribute to making Alephium more valuable to the space. And we very much encourage you to provide feedback and be an active part into its growth and its evolution.
So, sounds like a great ending. Hey, thank you very much for your time. It was really great chatting with you. I learned a lot myself, and yeah,
Cool. Thank you very much.
thanks for watching.
WaveAct, the web-free software company that understands what you want.